Let's take a look at the strange twist into what humans, or what lengths humans will go to in order to stave off climate change. So the concept of climate geoengineering, the European Union is looking to support research that goes into possibly blocking the sun's rays from the earth, as well as changing the weather patterns. Sounds palatable? Well, or doable? Let's see if it is. Dr. Christopher Trisos is with us this afternoon. He's the Senior Research Fellow at African Climate and Development Initiative at UCT. Doc, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Just reading this alone, you cannot even fathom blocking the sun's rays, but alas, humans and reaching for the sun. Firstly, how possible is this?
So what we're talking about here is called solar geoengineering, which is a different types of technologies are being proposed, and all of them have one thing in common, and that is reflecting a small percentage of incoming sunlight back to space to offset global warming and cool the planet. And we know that some of these might work because of natural similarities or natural analogs, such as large volcanic eruptions. So the proposal that has been the most researched is called stratospheric aerosol injection, which would be injecting fine particulates into the stratosphere. So that's about 15 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. And large volcanic eruptions do that. Things like sulfuric acid and certain ash get injected into the stratosphere and form a fine haze that reflects sunlight back to space and cools the climate. So a lot of proposals. Another one is around marine cloud brightening, which is creating increased cloud cover over the oceans to reflect sunlight back to space. And this also happens from ship exhausts, for example. So there are a variety of proposals. None of them are actually being implemented at scale. Most of the research is still computer simulations in the labs of climate scientists.
At what risk to the ecosystem?
So it's very clear, you're right, that if these technologies were one day to be deployed, they have potentially severe risks for people and for ecosystems. And proponents of them also argue that the reason we would consider them is as an emergency option to offset high levels of global warming and prevent the most dangerous climate change for people and ecosystems. We do not yet understand the risks very well. Some research that has been done suggests, for example, that stratospheric aerosol injection, so the technology I was talking about, that's small particles in the stratosphere to reflect sunlight back to space, the way that would change the climate could change the geography of areas on the planet suitable for malaria transmission. Other types of research suggest it might increase extinction risk for species if it ever failed, because if we deploy these technologies, we would need to deploy them for several decades, possibly even longer than a century, for offsetting global warming. And if there was a sudden failure in the technology, you would get extremely rapid global warming, more rapid than if you never did the solar geoengineering in the first place.
I don't know if we want to play this game, but since we are here, is this not as simple as humans checking themselves, reducing the carbon footprint? Factories actually, or not even factories, or producers actually doing what they say they will. We are always witnessing how there's COP27 and you'll find leaders from various parts of the different continents flying, each with different airplanes, increasing their carbon footprint to talk about decreasing emissions.
Yes, you're right. I mean, the science is crystal clear that the way to stop climate change is to stop burning fossil fuels that cause greenhouse gas emissions. So if we want to halt climate change, we have to get greenhouse gas emissions to net zero, which means a rapid reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, which is a rapid reduction in usage of fossil fuels this decade. And we're currently at 1.1 degrees Celsius of global warming, and we're seeing the impacts in terms of flooding and droughts and extreme heat waves. And more likely than not, we will reach 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming in the first half of the 2030s. If we want to stop global warming there, then a rapid reduction in fossil fuels is needed this decade. The solar geoengineering people are talking about is really a stopgap measure, or some people talk about it like a painkiller. It treats the symptoms. It's not going to reduce the cause of global warming, which is burning fossil fuels. What it does is it might offset some of the climate impacts like heat waves or tropical storms, but the ultimate solution is really a reduction in fossil fuel usage globally.
Has this divided opinion in the scientific space or community?
Yes, scientifically and politically especially. I mean, solar geoengineering is a very scary proposal for many people. There are proposals from some parts of the research and political community for a non-use agreement, so countries of the world to sign an agreement that they will not use this type of technology. There are other people who are very concerned that fossil fuel interests, such as certain oil and gas interests, could use the solar geoengineering proposal as a way to say we can keep burning fossil fuels because this other technology could help us control climate change. But like I said previously, if that technology failed or there were unexpected surprises with that technology, we might be in an even worse situation than just doing the rapid reduction of fossil fuels in the first place.
It is so contentious, Doc. Speaking to a medical doctor, they pointed out that even they are limited, especially when it comes to preserving life or even creating life, right? So when you are on your deathbed and you desperately need that oxygen or whatever, there's only so much that they can do. And here we are playing with ideas of re-engineering the ecosystem, deflecting the sun's rays, etc. The everyday person, right? So you speak of governments that could potentially sign an agreement to say, well, we're not part of this. But what is it that you and I can do? Because I understand there's more than 100 scientists that have signed a letter in support of this research back in February already.
I think as individuals in society, the most important thing we can do in a South African context is be climate literate. So know about climate change, know that it has human causes in burning fossil fuels and deforestation, and know how climate change might affect you. So read up the Africa Climate Development Initiative website. Local newspapers, increasingly South African media, are doing a really good job of explaining how climate change can impact us and our lives, our food security, our jobs, and support politicians that offer climate solutions, and be involved in your local community in terms of things like renewable energy deployment, looking at how solar power might be suitable in your community, looking at ways of saving water. We know that climate change will increase droughts, become adapted to climate change. And so a lot of these are things that require cooperation globally among countries, but there's also a lot we can do in our communities. And it's really both things that have to happen. Government has to act and individuals have to act. It can't all be individual responsibility. There has to be policies and laws and regulation from government to enable this transition to a renewable energy economy where people are protected by being adapted to climate change. But also as individuals, we can make choices in the way the pension fund that your work invests, for example. Ask questions. Is it investing in high fossil fuel industries? If it is, why can't it invest more in renewable energies? When you're making choices about the types of products you use, or even just choices about things like where you plan to go on vacation, think about the fossil fuel intensity of that. But like I said, especially being climate literate, looking towards which politicians, which civil society organizations you can be part of that are looking for change and pushing for change towards a green economy.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Dr. Christopher Trisos, Senior Research Fellow at African Climate and Development Initiative at UCT.